Listeners, welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show. Today, I sit down with 5 times Paratriathlon World Champion, Bill Chaffey. Bill lets us into his world as he gets ready to make his debut at the Paralympics and also the debut for Paratriathlon at the Paralympics. This is a big event. Bill goes into Rio as the hot favourite. And in this great interview, we talk through what it's like to wear the expectation, the pressure around that, and also what it took to overcome life-threatening injuries to get back into his physical best. You're going to love this episode. Get ready. Let's jump right in.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Listeners, joining me today, I've got Bill Chaffey, 5 times Paratriathlon World Champion and Rio-bound athlete for the debut Paralympic Triathlon. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks, mate. Good to be here.
I like to jump straight in with a bit of a curly one. What's the thing that scares you most, Bill?
Oh, geez. I don't know, probably finishing a race and looking back and thinking I could have done better.
Have you had that experience?
I think I have. I think most athletes do a race and then they finish it, and if they haven't finished where they want, or even sometimes when they win, they look back and they go, oh, I could have gone harder in this section, or I could have done that. I think a lot of athletes are really hard on themselves that way, and I am. And so, yeah, that I just want to finish a race and know that I've given absolutely everything. So,
Bill, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Wouldn't looking back and sort of analysing and expecting more be a good thing?
It can be good and it can be bad. Of course, if you look back and find errors, well, then you can improve on them the next time. But if it's your one and only shot at the Paralympics, then you might not be back there again. Yeah. Or you don't want to be looking back thinking I could have. So
yeah, exactly. Bill, have you thus far in your career, I'm going to deep dive into your career, how you started and where you're going, but have you executed what you put in your words as a perfect race?
Yeah, a couple of them. I think the World Championships in China in 2011, I can look back at that and when I finished, I just did everything right. It's certainly not the fastest race I've ever done, but everything came off. I didn't have any mistakes anywhere. Everything was just really smooth, and I was really happy with that race, yeah.
And that was which one of your 5 world titles in Beijing?
That was my second.
Yeah. So that was your retaining of the crown, if you like. Yep.
Yeah, well, I won my first in 2009 and then got a silver in 2010 in Budapest, and then, to China after that.
Where was your first World Championship, 2009? Is that the Gold Coast?
Sunny Gold Coast, mate, hometown. Yeah.
Hometown support. How was that, racing in front of a home crowd?
Oh, great. I had all the family were there, friends were there. It was my hometown, and, it's good. You come across the line and you recognise a voice. Noel's calling out Bill Chaffey, Gold Coast athlete. So yeah, it's great.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And Bill, World Championships back on the Gold Coast in 2018.
2018, yeah. Well, the Com Games are in 2018 too. So, and it was announced, I think, in April that they will include wheelchair triathlon, not all paratriathlon categories, but just wheelchair triathlon for the Com Games in 2018. So, mate, it could be a swan song for me. I'm not sure, but it'd certainly be good to start on the Gold Coast and finish on the Gold Coast.
Wouldn't that be a nice bow tie? Wrap on the present. Bill, let's unpack your journey into paratriathlon. Anyone that knows you or from the triathlon / multi-sport community that's aware of, you know, your incredible success, most of them would have an insight into the story that occurred before, you know, you took on that World of Paratriathlon. But for those listeners, international and Australian, that don't know your backstory, can you just unpack the story, Bill, of what took place in 2005?
Yeah, sure. Well, I moved to the Gold Coast in 2001. Before that, I was a rugby player. And I discovered triathlon when I moved to the coast because it's a coastal type of sport. And I competed over sprint distance, Olympic distance, 70.3. And I was training for my first Ironman, the Australian Ironman Championships in Foster in 2005. So it was 5 days before the race. I picked up my bike from Gold Coast Triathlete, just been all kitted up with all the race gear. I was ready to go. Going on my last training ride, and 4 days before the race, I was hit from behind by a truck on the highway. And it would have been doing 110. It was a 110 zone, and being hit directly in the backside on my bike. So broke 4 vertebrae right down the bottom of the spine. Broke my pelvis completely in half, and it was broken in 7 places, and broke both my elbows. So I was really lucky that I survived. Of course, the doctors told me in hospital that about 80% of people with the pelvic fracture that I had would just bleed to death. So. I survived, very lucky, spent 5 months in hospital. I was very determined in hospital to get out as soon as I could because, one, I didn't like being in hospital, and 2, Vanessa, my wife, was pregnant and just about to have our second child, so I wanted to be home for that. And I was. And then, I, got out of hospital and just wanted to get back to being fit. I loved being fit, being a triathlete. And just wanted all that back again. So I got back into swimming to start with, and then in 2008 did my first wheelchair triathlon here on the Gold Coast.
And Bill, obviously that's a very brief excerpt of the...
Tried to keep it in a nutshell there. Yeah.
But just unpack a little bit out of that journey. You were training for your full debut Ironman triathlon.
Yep.
In Foster, which was where it was back in Australia at that stage, 2005. Out training one morning.
Yeah, one morning.
Yep.
It was a regular road that I always went on. At that stage, I was probably riding about 300 kilometres a week, and I always used this particular part of the highway, which has a bicycle lane going alongside of it. And hindsight being 2020, it's probably not the best place for a bicycle lane, but I rode it. Hundreds of other cyclists around the area rode it as well, and. Just this morning, I was just unlucky, I suppose. I was in the cycle lane. The truck was too far to the left and hit me right in the back.
And you said Vanessa, your wife, was pregnant with your second to-be daughter.
Yeah.
How far along her pregnancy was she?
She was 3 months.
3 months.
So it was a very stressful 6 months for her, while I was in hospital, and obviously getting the news that I'd had the accident. That would have been horrific for her. Like, particularly the police officer that gave her the news said, "Look, this has happened. Bill's been hit on the highway by a truck." And Vanessa tells me that she then said, "We don't know if he's alive or not." So, it would have been really hard for her. And I still maintain to this day that Vanessa, Heidi, my firstborn, would have done it tougher than anybody else, tougher than me, because I was in hospital, medicated, being looked after and all that sort of thing. So, it's the people around on the outside that I think do it harder.
How old was Heidi, your firstborn daughter, at that stage?
She was 18 months old.
So so Vanessa was nursing her?
Yeah, nursing her, and she's a very influential part of someone's growing up. Her at that young age, she's still a sponge. She's absorbing so much, and she sees Vanessa upset every day and comes to visit me in the hospital on weekends, and it would have been a traumatic time for her. But I think it's I think the accident and seeing me in a wheelchair and the difficulties I have made both my daughters stronger people. They walk down the street and they see somebody, an amputee or somebody else in a wheelchair or something like that, and they don't even look twice. It's just normality to them, and I like that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And your youngest daughter, her name again, Bill?
Amity.
Amity, that's right. So Heidi and Amity, what do they think about Dad now?
Yeah, well, I think they're pretty excited. They're pretty happy about the Paralympics. You know, I don't know whether they have a great understanding of the Olympics and the Paralympics. They haven't really watched a lot of it in the past. However, they've been to all my races, and they do understand the magnitude of, you know, winning, being the best in the world. And yeah, I hope they're very proud. I think they are.
Oh, I'm sure. How old are they now, Bill?
They're 12 and 10.
12 and 10. They're at that age where they would certainly appreciate it. When you were in hospital, Bill, just back on that for a sec, how long were you in there for?
5 months I was in hospital all up. The first 2 months I had an external fixation drilled into my hips to put my pelvis back together. So, and that came up out of the hips and over my stomach so the pelvis bones would grow back together. So the first 2 months of the hospital stay, I was in bed, only able to lay on my back, and you know, occasionally wardsmen would come in at night and sort of roll me onto my side for 15 minutes and then onto my other side, so I didn't get any complications with just laying on my back. But 2 months of not being able to get out of bed was pretty tough. But then,
as in not being able to physically move.
Yeah, and then, you know, with all the medication and stuff, it took me a long time to grasp the concept of the fact that I was paralysed in the left leg too. I remember probably about 3 weeks into my hospital stay, Vanessa was visiting me, and I just said to her quietly, I said, would you just be able to go and get one of the doctors, because I can't feel my leg. And so that was 3 weeks after the accident. So it took a long time for me to realise what had happened. But then, you know, they took me down to the spinal ward after my pelvis had healed, and getting me out of bed was actually quite a challenge, because, you know, laying still in one position for such a long time, then they had to sort of get the joints and everything moving, which was difficult. But, you know, I'm a very determined person, and the spinal cord damage that I sustained, it completely paralysed my left leg, but my right leg, while it has about 90% feeling, I can feel the majority of my right leg. I can stand on it and move it, so, and that's pretty good. I am able to stand up on my right leg for a little while, and that was one of the first things I did. You know, 3 months down in the spinal ward, it's a very it opens up your eyes. There's three other people in my room who were all quadriplegic, who couldn't move their arms at all. They were being fed, and I was feeling guilty because every morning I would get up and stand up beside my bed and make my bed. But I felt very grateful that I was, you know, my injury is not as bad as someone else's. But in a way, I felt a little guilty doing that in front of them too. But it made me realise so early on in the piece that, you know, you may be injured or you may have some sort of setback, but there's always someone else out there who's got it worse. So, you know, you should be happy with how you are.
What Bill was going through, what was the conversation in your head like when you were told that you had a permanent residual paralysis of your left leg? You said at 3 weeks you first became aware of it, but at some point one of the medics must have come around and said, Bill, be prepared, this is what your spinal injury is going to mean. What was going through your head when you got that news? As at that stage, you were what was in years? You were.
I was 29.
29, yeah. Fit guy. You know, training for an Ironman triathlon. Dad of one and a half, two to be. And doctor tells you that, Bill, 29 years, the left leg isn't going to be the same again. What was that like?
Yeah, I was pretty stubborn, and maybe stubbornness helped me too, because I can remember the doctor saying, "Look, you're never going to walk again," and I'm like, "Well, why not?" And you know, I never. I never said. A lot of people ask me, when did you realise that you could go on and do everything that I have done? And my answer is always the same: that I never thought that I couldn't.
Yeah,
so
wow.
it wasn't a matter of thinking, like losing the thought that I could and then having to get it back again. I never lost the idea that I couldn't do something. So I think that kind of made it easier for me. And maybe it was stubbornness, but yeah, look, I remember the doctor saying I'd never walk again, and then I was like, well, I'll show you, and so I could stand up on my right leg, and then he said, okay, you may walk, but you'll always have a great big caliper attached to your left leg so you can stand on it. And then once again, I was like, well, I'll show you. And eventually, I did walk out of hospital with this great big caliper, but, it ended up that I progressed to less of a caliper, and then to the point where I can take a few steps with a walking stick without any caliper. So I can't walk a long way because my pelvis is still very unstable and I can't support myself on my left leg, which is why I use the wheelchair. But it was more like if someone tells me I can't do something, it's then I want to prove them wrong. I want them to be wrong.
And that's been with you even before the accident. That must have just been you right through your early growing up years. And
oh, yeah, for sure. I always wanted to be better than anybody else. I grew up just outside of Tamworth, and there were a few kids around we were out of town, but didn't live inside the town. There were a few kids around the area on farm sort of blocks, and we used to ride our BMX bikes around when we were young blokes, and there were certain hills that we'd climb up, and there was nowhere in the world I was ever going to be. We'd start riding up these hills on our BMX, and everyone would have to get off and walk because they were steep hills. I was always going to be the first one that rode up all the way, and I was, and I just always wanted to be better than anybody else. And
this is in you.
Yeah, I think so.
Faster, better, stronger.
Yeah.
Well, talking about being better than anyone else in your field. Fast forwarding a few chapters, 2000 and I think it would have been around 2013 maybe. I think you Hawaii Ironman Triathlon, 2013.
Yeah, 2013 for it was Hawaii.
So, Bill, you'd been in the sport, World Paratriathlon for a good 6 or 7 years or thereabouts at that stage.
Yeah.
Hawaii was obviously always something you had your mind on, even pre-accident. As a triathlete training for Foster, I imagine. Yeah, well, Ironman was... I never really... I'd watched Hawaii, never thought that I would ever qualify for it, but I just wanted to do an Ironman because it was the furthest. I had not then heard of Ultra Ironman, but I wanted to do Ironman because it was the furthest, and Foster was where I could do that in Australia. And, I got... that taken from me by being hit 4 days before the race, but and so I'm also one of these people that once I say I'm going to do something, I can't not do it because then I've lied to myself. So I don't care about so much lying to other people. I'll never lie to myself. So if I say it out loud that I'm going to do something, I have to do it. You're doing it. And yeah, so I said, look, I missed Foster, so I will do an Ironman in the wheelchair. I contacted Ken Baggs. I couldn't do the race in Port Macquarie because they moved the Ironman from Foster to Port in 2006. I couldn't do the Port race because the course is not suitable, and that's fair enough. But then they opened up an Ironman race in Cairns, so I said, I will do that. And then I'm like, oh, damn, now I've got to train for it because I've said I'm going to do it. But I did it in 2011. I did my first Ironman. That was a really good feeling because had it taken away from me in 2005. But it wasn't a qualifying race back then for Hawaii. So it was made a qualifying race for Hawaii for wheelchair athletes in 2012. So I went back again. And did it for the second time?
Yeah, did Cairns again.
Did you go faster?
I was a little bit faster, yeah. But see, I qualified for Hawaii in that race. I won that race in the wheelchair section. But I really think... And when I raced Hawaii, I did exceptionally faster time than Cairns. I think Cairns is harder. Anyone out there is listening who wants to do an Ironman, if you can do Cairns, you can do Hawaii, because Cairns, I would argue, is a harder course than Hawaii.
And Bill, for listeners, explain what you completing an Ironman entails, like literally step by step.
Well, it's a hell of a lot of training to start with, but it's a 3.8 kilometre swim. Now, because I can't feel or move my left leg, obviously I can't propel myself by kicking like that. So, and my left leg sort of flails about out behind me. I'm not sure where it is because I can't feel where it is. So I tie my two legs together at the knees. It still enables me to kick a little with my right leg, but doesn't propel me a lot, just gives me a bit of balance. So 3.8 kilometres of that. I've always had two friends that meet me at the swim exit. They pick me up and they carry me to my hand cycle.
What are their names, Bill?
Caddy and Tats. So
good on Aussie names.
That's right.
Good on you boys.
Yeah, Luke and Darren, they've been my best mates for a long time, so they've always carried me from the water to my hand bike. And for people who don't know, that's a recumbent cycle. It's 3 wheels, 1 wheel at the front, which is a drive wheel, which is exactly the same setup as a normal bicycle, but the drive wheel is on the front. So I'm laying down virtually on my back in that bike. My legs are sitting beside the front wheel, 2 wheels at the back, and I pedal with my arms. So 180 kilometres of that, pedaling with my arms.
Which would be how many? What's your revs per minute?
I usually holding around 70 to 80 RPM.
And what was your split bike time approximately for one of those Ironman?
I think, Hawaii I did just over 6 hours.
So 6 hours in that position with a rev of, 60, 70, 80, whatever turnovers per minute.
Yeah.
Have you ever done the maths on how many repetitions?
No, mate, I wasn't ever good at maths. I was never good at that at school.
Well, listeners, if you haven't seen biceps and arms until you've seen Bill Chaffey's arms, they are the most, and his upper body, it's one of the most incredible looking units I've ever seen. So, Bill, 6 hours or thereabouts in the bike.
Yep.
You get off the bike. Caddy and Tats, they're at the transition area.
Yep. They helped me out of the hand bike and helped me into a racing wheelchair. I think most people know what a racing wheelchair is. 2 large cambered wheels at the rear and 1 small wheel at the front. I'm in a kneeling position in the back of that, like almost in the fetal position, really. And I'm pushing the wheels with my arms. So, and then that's how I do the run leg. So 42 kilometres of that. However, the advantage I have of that, I can go a hell of a lot faster in the run than what anyone can run it. So, I do lose a bit of time in the hand cycle, but I can certainly make that up in the run. So, I think, I'm not sure of what my exact split was in the marathon and the Ironman, but I have done a 1 hour 41 marathon before here on the Gold Coast. But I ended up finishing the Hawaii race in 9 hours and 30 minutes. So I was pretty happy with that. Wow.
And where did that position you over there, Bill?
Second, I was in Hawaii. There's an exceptional athlete in Thomas Fruworth. He's an Austrian wheelchair athlete, and he specialises in long-distance Ironman racing, and he beat me on the day. He's better than me there, so, hats off to Tom. So.
And have you come across Tom since in the Paratriathlon World Championships?
No, he's given away triathlon. He's concentrating on just hand cycling, but he is going to the Paralympics this year, concentrating on just hand cycling.
So he'll be at Rio, but in a different event.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Not that you would shy away from competition, Bill. I know you.
Yeah.
So Bill, and that's an insight into your world of Ironman triathlon. In terms of your training, you've been selected into the Paratriathlon team to represent Australia in just a matter of really weeks in Rio. Explain or give us an insight into your world of training sort of in the last month. Like, what's a typical week look like for Bill?
Goes up and down hours-wise, as I'm sure most people do. But, for example, last month, the month of June, I was doing a volume month. So I did up to 30 hours a week of training. That was involving four times 2 hour swim sessions a week. or 3 times 1 hour gym sessions a week, and plus hand cycling and racing wheelchair sessions. And the longest ride I was doing was a 4.5 hour ride, which I mainly did around the cane fields and the hills at the back of Murwillumbah. It's good training out there. Most of the the motorists out there know me now and are aware I'm going to be out there. So it is a little scary sometimes being on a hand cycle because I am so close to the ground and probably more difficult to see. But I think most people are aware I'm out there now, and it's good training. So that was June. A volume month doing up to 30 hours a week. I probably could have done more, but I work as well and I have the family. But now, coming into the Paralympics, I've now cut back to more race-specific training. So the hours are down, but the intensity's up. Still 4 swim sessions a week, 3 gym sessions a week, about 3 or 4 cycling sessions a week, and 2 or 3 run sessions a week.
And you obviously programmed right up until Rio now, so you know exactly what you're doing. And
well, my program always comes in 2-week blocks, so I know what I'm doing for the next fortnight, and I can pretty much predict how it's going to go. We sit down with my coaches at the QAS, and we discuss a year. We discuss how things are going to look during the year. So I knew that June was always going to be volume. I knew that July was going to be race specific, and I knew all this back in January. So I knew what the training was going to be around, but didn't know the general specifics of it until I come up against it.
And Bill, leading into Rio as the 5 times world champion, obviously, and the debut Olympic, Paralympic appearance for the sport, not just yourself. How do you manage the expectations and the pressure?
It's tough, and I put a lot of pressure on myself as well. I do feel it from people I'm around, and unfortunately, that makes me put a little bit more pressure on myself too. But the main pressure comes because I am so determined to win. It can be good and it can be bad, I think, having such a determination. If I, for some reason, I don't win, it's not the end of the world, but I would be disappointed. But I try not to think about not winning. I try to only focus on what I'm going there to do. I know it's a possibility that I could not win. I know the competition is super strong. Every year since I won my first World Championship, the racing has become closer and closer and closer. And, back in 2009, I won comfortably. And last year in 2015, I only just won. So, it's tough. And while being a 5-time World Championship, I may very well go into the race as the favourite, and I understand that. I know myself that there are a handful of other guys who can beat me. I'm not sure that... Australia's funny, very supportive of their athletes over all sports, but I think the athletes themselves know that there's other competition out there who can get them. And it's good that the Australian public are supportive of their own athletes, saying, you're going to win, you're going to win. But I think they also need to be aware that there are fantastic other people out there. And so, look, the pressure can be tough, but it is a mental game. I think it can really be more a mental game than a physical game sometimes.
So that being the case, what will you be saying to yourself on the start line in a few weeks' time? Like, what's your typical pre-race chat to Bill Chaffey?
I like to be alone before a race, and my team knows that. They generally make sure everyone's away from me. Vanessa, leading up to the World Championships last year, I went off on my own just beside a fence, beside where the swim was. Vanessa and the girls came up to me, they gave me a kiss and said good luck, and then they disappeared because they know I like to just get in my own space. One of my best mates, Tats, who's always with me at every race, he just said to me, which I keep in my head, it's just another race. It's just Murwillumbah, which is my local club. It's just Murwillumbah on a Saturday morning. It's just another race. And that's what I try to keep in my head. It's just another race. So I don't go into the club races I do down in Murwillumbah wanting to come second either. I want to win everything. So therefore, I just need to treat it like it's Murwillumbah. It's not any... While it is bigger, and everyone knows the Paralympics is bigger, well, the World Championships is bigger, and then the Paralympics is bigger again. So, there is a lot of pressure, but it's just another race. And if I can keep that in my head, I know I'll be able to race well.
It's just perspective, right?
Yeah.
Is there a time in your career to date where you feel like you didn't have the right perspective around a race?
Oh, look, last year, because the competition was getting so close, and I kind of went into last year's race a little negatively, thinking that I couldn't win, thinking I'll probably get... I'll be lucky to podium. I'll get third or second because the competition is so strong. I'm not the fastest swimmer. I'm not the fastest cyclist, and I'm not the fastest wheelchair racer in paratriathlon. But I'm very lucky that I've always been able to put the three together better than anybody else can. And so last year I came out of the water with quite a large deficit, but I was able to push hard in the bike, and I think the pressure that I put on the guy in front forced him to make a mistake, so I was able to overtake him and come away with the win. So, and that maybe that pressure was a mental thing that, like I was speaking about before, it is a mental thing. You can't let the pressure get to you. There are going to be guys out there who are going to be in front of you or be coming up behind you fast, but you need to race your race, and that's what I did. So I started the race probably a little negative in my mind, but as soon as the gun went off, it was just Murwillumbah.
Yeah, wow. And you came home just with the victory.
Yeah, well,
where did you get that rate? Where did you pick that one up?
I got it in the bike. I got to the lead in the bike, and then came into transition 2 in first with probably my biggest threat ever. My biggest threat ever is a Dutch guy who will be racing in the Paralympics. I've raced him several times before. I've beat him in World Championships twice. He's beaten me before in a race. So we fight it out. But I was able to beat him into T2, and his weakness is his run. So he ended up coming third. So because another guy has a stronger run than him. But once I got to the front in the bike, I knew I'd come home with the win.
Yeah, wow. What was going through your head at that stage?
Oh,
just another race.
Don't crash.
Great. Yeah, Bill, what would be one bit of advice you'd give to people looking to perform at their physical best?
Just, I think just believe in yourself. You got to... A lot of people have coaches these days, but back, pre-injury when I was just an age group triathlete, I never had a coach, and I trained myself from reading triathlon magazines. But, so yes, you need to trust the people around you. So if you do have a coach, trust your coach. If you don't trust your coach, find another coach. But also believe in yourself, because nobody knows your body like you know your body. And all the training around, well, this is my personal belief anyway, all the training around heart rate or lactate tolerance or all these factors that people take in, power efforts or whatever, you can gauge yourself on whatever computer graph, but nobody knows your body like you know your body. And if you need rest is the most important thing that you can have.
There's obviously been periods in your career where you have failed to get that rest and schedule it appropriately. Yeah,
and it can hurt. It can hurt your race. It can hurt you if you don't rest properly. You can end up injured and end up on Brad Beer's physio table.
We don't want that. And Bill, who's one athlete that you have looked to through your career? One athlete you admire across any sport? Oh,
look, without a doubt, Leighton Hewitt. A lot of people sort of go, why? Leighton at times has been a polarising sort of athlete. You either love him or you hate him. I reckon he's fantastic. I can remember watching Leighton when he was at his peak, and if the ball landed 3 courts away, he would run for it. He would go for it anyway, even if he was never going to get to it. He tried. Yeah. He went for it. And I I love that determination and passion, and not just sport. I see it over so many different areas. People with passion inspire me.
Cool. I'm with you, Bill. I'm a Leighton fan, always have been. And despite his, at times, as you say, polarising nature, his on-court performance, I don't think you could, ask for anything more.
He's unbelievable. He will never give up.
Yeah. Were you sad when he played his last game at the Australian Open?
I was. I was. It was sad to see him go. But, even when he did have his last game, he didn't come off the court fresh. He was absolutely knackered because he gave it a go.
I remember hearing Roy and HG, I think, the night after, saying Australia woke up in a bit of a funk this morning because it's the first time for 10 years that we haven't had Leighton Hewitt out there as our number one tennis player chasing down every ball, and it was so true.
That's right.
Bill, what's on your bucket list sporting-wise?
Well, definitely the Paralympics. That's not over yet. So you can't count your chickens before they hatch. So, that's definitely the first thing I have to do. I certainly am looking forward to the Com Games in 2018, which are going to be on the Gold Coast at the hometown race. After that, I don't really know. I don't know. I may go on to 2020. I'll make that decision after 2018.
Yeah.
The bucket list, I suppose, it's a funny thing. I just want to... I never got... I haven't got to race a 70.3 World Championships, and I'd like to do that. So, I've raced World Championships in 2009, which is over the Olympic distance. They then shortened all the paratriathlon races to sprint distance, so I've raced and won over that as well. I've raced Ironman World Championships, but I haven't raced a 70.3 World Championships. So I'll miss that one this year, which is on the Sunshine Coast because I'll be in Rio. But, I'll have to chase that down one year.
And Bill, what's on the bucket list life-wise outside of sport?
Life-wise, I wish I was a gazillionaire and I'd retire tomorrow, but, I just want to live out and be happy and continue. I want to continue to train because I don't ever want to be not fit, but I want to be fit enough to have a good time with my family. One of my daughters she's born in September, and nearly every year, she complains that she's never had a birthday in Australia because she's always at the Triathlon World Championships in some part of the world. Poor thing, first world problems. She's just busting to go to the snow. She's never been to the snow because we spend all our time and money travelling around chasing triathlons. So, bucket list life-wise, I'd like to take the kids to the snow.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. Well, Bill Chaffey, come a few weeks' time, Rio, you will have, irrespective of how the race goes, a big cheer squad, mate, in your corner. Not because of your performances, because of the way you go about what you do. I've known you for many years now and always been inspired by the way you just, as you say, just doggedly pursue your best. So, mate, thanks for the inspiration for myself and, all the followers that you've got. And where can we follow your journey?
Mate, I have a Twitter page and a Facebook page. Twitter is at B_Chaffey, and Facebook's just Bill Chaffey Athlete. So, you can keep up to date with how things are going there, and I'll try to keep right on top of it. CHAFFEY, listeners. So find Bill over on those social handles, and, mate, go get them. Thanks very much. Thanks, mate.
Coming up on episode 17 of the Physical Performance Show, I sit down with one of Australia's most successful road cyclists. This gentleman rode the Tour de France twice, was the National Road Race Champion, and also the Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic Champion in 1996. None other than Nick Gates. In the meantime, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.